Because of time, I'm trying to say because she's to quickly run to another engagement afterwards. So let's give a hand to Joey Krishna as she comes in, and then thereafter, the Honourable Minister will come through.
Program Director, Dr. Ngobo, Honourable Minister, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, our hosts, the leadership of eThekwini Metro, councillors, traditional leaders present, the leadership of SALGA, the leadership of the Centre for Municipal Asset Management and MISA, senior government officials, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joey Krishnan. I am here delivering the address of the Honourable MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs in KwaZulu-Natal. So let me at the outset record the Honourable MEC's apology. Due to other commitments, he was not able to personally make it, but the message that he has sent is personal, and it is one that he no doubt has very close to his heart, and as that we as COGTA also strive towards envisioning and implementing. I will read out the MEC's message, so please understand that this is the MEC speaking. A humble greeting to all of you. We thank the Centre for Asset Management, Municipal Asset Management, who together with SALGA have convened this infrastructure asset management Indaba. We welcome the theme and the opportunity to give input to the topic of leadership path for sustainable municipal delivery. We will also follow the advice to steer the discussion towards the implications of the emergency of climate change and resilient, adaptable municipalities in that regard. Let me begin by suggesting that we also need to look at sustainable service delivery as an ecosystem, one whose assets are not only physical and financial, but more importantly, human. We sometimes forget the human capital and the human assets that we have. Ultimately, it is human beings that make local government to be developmental and contribute to the vision of a better life for all. As KZN COGTA, we thought we should underline this point from the onset, given the worrying trend that we are seeing throughout South Africa of the murder of our councillors and municipal officials. Since November 2021 local government elections, no less than 54 councillors and municipal officials have been murdered in our country. KwaZulu-Natal also faces another scourge of the murder of Amakosi and Izinduna, who are pillars of cooperative governance. These crimes must be seen within a country with a history and embedded culture of violence, which is again confirmed yesterday in the release of crime statistics, which revealed that more than 7,000 people were murdered in 3 months between July and September 2022. SALGA has made concrete proposals on the need to beef up security of councillors and municipal officials. Such measures, important as they are, can only be short-term. We need to go back to the basics of respecting human life and implementing what Nelson Mandela called the RDP of the soul. In this regard, we urge everyone to put programs of social cohesion and nation building at the heart of our developmental agenda. COGTA is doing this today in Pietermaritzburg through the relaunch of the Masakane campaign at Msunduzi municipality. We also need to strengthen local economic development in our communities, fight poverty, and reduce inequality to reduce crime. The problem of crime, greed, and corruption leads to criminal elements vandalizing municipal infrastructure and delaying service delivery. We must mobilize communities to report criminals who destroy municipal infrastructure and steal electric cables. Many of these people live in communities that we must discourage who are glamorizing crime. In KwaZulu-Natal, we are addressing the issue of leakages through the war on leaks and creating employment for our youth. We are ensuring that municipalities ring-fence their 8% to address infrastructure maintenance. And through the KZN Municipal Excellence Awards, we're rewarding municipalities who are adhering to this policy. The awards also reward municipalities that are fighting pollution, adopting green energies, and delivering bulk infrastructure on time within budget. This is important in our efforts to reduce the carbon footprint and create resilient municipalities. Addressing the Local Government Summit on 27 September in Gauteng, the MEC of CAGTA made these points which are relevant to this topic today. Climate change, this is on the extreme weather patterns that we have experienced. Climate change is a global emergency threat and has been with us for a long time. It recognizes no borders or national boundaries. Climate change, like COVID-19, must be addressed, and an emerging risk that affects the whole of humanity. The KZN floods that we experienced in April and May 2022, through prolonged heavy rainfall, resulted in flooding, mudslides, and structural damage in coastal areas of the province. The average rainfall was estimated at 300 millimeters over 24 hours. No less than 448 people were killed. The floods destroyed over 6,500 houses and partially destroyed about 9,000 houses, and approximately 117,000 people were affected. More than 5,000 people lost their homes. Add to this that more than 7,000 people were housed in at least 91 shelters. All 10 districts, as well as the eThekwini Metro, were affected in KwaZulu-Natal, and the worst affected municipalities were eThekwini Metro, Ugu District, King Cetshwayo, Ilembe, and Umgungundlovu districts. The continued inclement weather had an adverse impact and affected the pace of the response and recovery measures. SALGA also noted that town planning in most municipalities is not responsive to the current climate crisis and change impacts. Informal settlements are springing up in unsafe areas due to the lack of proper town planning, and increases people's vulnerability to climate change. Corruption in procurement processes also compromises new infrastructure. There's a need for climate-resilient infrastructure and the strengthening of the disaster risk management functions. They also stressed that it is crucial that communities are not settled in dangerous places close to riverbanks. Attention must be paid to stormwater drainage systems, wetlands, and rivers, which are failing to handle heavy downpours. Municipalities should be supported to improve the disaster risk management function and need to focus on prevention efforts. Bongani Sithole, in his PhD thesis titled Municipal Disaster Management in South Africa, Intergovernmental Relations as a Planning Instrument, makes these observations. Disaster, development, and environmental problems are inextricably linked. Poorer communities are more at risk and less resilient than communities in possession of coping capacities. Section 41(1)(b) of the Constitution provides that all spheres of government are required to secure the well-being of the people of South Africa. The responsibility for disaster management is specific to a functional area of concurrent national and provincial legislative competence. The Disaster Management Act of 2002 emphasizes the need for disaster management managers to move away from the customary approach, which focused only on reactive measures, to a new global focus on disaster management of reducing risk through sustainable development, building resilience, and promoting sustainable livelihoods. Disaster management plans are included in an IDP of the municipality and should provide sufficient information for discussion between the spheres of government and all stakeholders. Information with regard to vulnerability reduction, specific priority risk reduction programs and projects are aimed at achieving the vision, mission, statement goals, and strategic objectives that should be provided in the IDP. The International Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction is a strategic framework adopted by the United Nations member states in 2000 to build resilient nations and communities as an essential condition for sustainable development. In January 2005, no less than 168 countries approved the Hyogo Framework for Action, building the resilience of nations and communities to disasters. In South Africa, the global community have over the years developed a body of literature that defines resilient municipalities. In 2013, a paper by Willemien van Niekerk from the CSIR, titled Translating Disaster Resilience into Spatial Planning Practice in South Africa, Challenges and Champions, made some observations. These included the fact that South Africa is marked by a growing tension between the need to expedite development to address inequalities and the need to introduce sustainable concerns such as environmental management and disaster reduction and planning. In many cases, development won out as the priority. So the longer-term issues of sustainability were of less immediate concern. Tragically, planning for everyday disaster resilience is not a priority amongst planners in some municipalities in South Africa. The mainstreaming of disaster resilience, including climate change adaptation and spatial planning, can be accomplished if approached in such a way that it is seen as part of the immediate development agenda. If resilient, a system has a degree of elasticity, allowing it to withstand a shock and reorganize itself when necessary. The stark inequalities of the country threaten the fragile social cohesion and give rise to an increased number of violent service delivery protests and attacks on foreign nationals. South African municipalities face a number of challenges in overcoming the apartheid spatial legacy, lack of funds, lack of technical, managerial, financial, and planning skills, and capacity to take up the developmental role, institutional transformation issues because of the amalgamation of municipalities, economic woes inherited from apartheid, huge service delivery backlogs, and intergovernmental misalignment and complexity. It is very likely that losses of lives, livelihoods, assets, and infrastructure will increase in the future as more people migrate to cities and as the effects of global processes such as climate change increase community vulnerability and disaster risk. Many of the implications will be beyond the capacity and experience of local government to address, wiping out development gain and diverting scarce funds towards disaster relief and reconstruction. On service delivery, we are informed by the demands of the people of KwaZulu-Natal during the campaign trail in 2019 and the ANC's election manifesto. The ANC led the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government and identified 8 priorities for the 6th provincial administration. These priorities continue to guide our program of action to improve the lives of our people. They are delivery of basic service, and in particular, we are focusing on water, job creation, growing the economy, growing SMMEs and cooperatives, education and skills development, human settlement and sustainable livelihoods, building a peaceful province, and building a caring and incorruptible government. For the past 3 years, we have accounted to the people of KZN through the State of the Province addresses and budget policy statements. Knowing that the sphere of local government is at the coalface of service delivery, the sixth administration under President Ramaphosa has introduced the District Development Plan and the DDM to improve the efficiency and enhance the performance of local government. The eThekwini Metro is one of the pilot sites identified by Cabinet to implement the DDM. In February, the State of the Province address, the province of KwaZulu-Natal highlighted our progress in delivering decent human settlements across KwaZulu-Natal. We also spoke about our plan to eradicate informal settlements and to decommission all Indela, or the transit camps in eThekwini and across KZN. The Espingo Lindela has been targeted through the current development of the Kanku Road project with an approved budget of more than 70.5 million rand for 360 sites. Planning has been complete and the installation of bulk infrastructure is 95% complete. Given our resources, we committed that in 2022-23, eThekwini will decommission 5 Lindelas. In 2023-24, a total of 14 Lindelas will be relocated to various projects. In 2025, the remaining 26 Lindelas will be relocated, thus bringing an end all the 45 Lindelas that currently exist in eThekwini. We are only highlighting human settlements in this presentation as they have direct relevance to the question of service delivery and the risks faced by people, especially the vulnerable poor, during disasters like floods and fires. KZN is committed to tackling climate change. The Easter floods sparked a reminder to KZN that as a coastal province, we remain vulnerable to the negative impact. These floods, the worst at a time, were occasioned by an unexpected change of weather, and at least 70 people were lost, and the damage was estimated at 1 billion rand. For years, the communities of our cities have been taking a direct hit from climate change. Civic structures in the Durban South Basin have protested the pollution by the private sector in that part of our province, especially in Wentworth, Clarewood, Montclair, Merebank, and the Bluff areas. According to the South African Weather Service, 165 millimeters of rain fell over the city on 22nd of April 2019, which broke the previous record from 2017. This was one of the heaviest rainfalls experienced in a 24-hour period since 1985. The impact of the storm was reported all through the south of Durban, and the hardest hit areas were Umlazi, Amanzimtoti, Chatsworth, Malvern, and Queensborough. Other affected areas included Mount Edgecombe, the Virginia Airport, and the Ballito areas. Further south, it went as far as Port Edward, Margate, Pennington, and Paddock, and even the Eastern Cape towards Port St. John's recorded massive rainfall. We are able to ride the storm thanks to the assistance of the entire national government, including the South African National Defence Force, the police, search and rescue, NGOs, and private sector. We hosted the 17th edition of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change's Conference of Parties, which was held in Durban in 2011. Following a resolution of that summit, KwaZulu-Natal established the Provincial Council for Climate Change and Sustainable Development. This was to coordinate climate change and management activities in the province, and we have for a long time been the only province to have this coordinated response to climate change. In order to win, we said we must have one provincial plan, one monitoring plan, and one coordinating structure at the highest level. This means we must integrate our mitigation and adaptation strategies while making sure they have been developed together with the local people. In this regard, we have resuscitated the KZN Climate Council. Globally, the Intergovernmental Planet on Climate Change notes that urban areas are responsible for up to 49% of global greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, research by the UN shows that the world is facing the greatest wave of urbanization in its history. 60% of the global population is expected to live in urban areas by 2030 and 70% by 2050. In December 2015, during the COP21, South Africa, under Minister Edna Molewa, signed the UN Paris Agreement to combat climate change. This focuses on greenhouse gas emissions mitigation and adaptation. The mainstreaming of climate change is necessary, and we must unite against the current threat of global warming, environmental degradation. Climate change poses a serious threat to urban infrastructure, quality of life, and the entire urban system. Climate change and environmental policy must therefore be the center of integrated development plans of all municipalities in KZN. We have made it a central pillar to the Provincial Growth and Development Strategy and Plan 2030. In this regard, the local government program on climate change looks at 7 technologies that can help municipalities in mitigating and adapting to climate change. These are solar water heaters, solar power, wind power, waste to energy, energy efficiency in municipal buildings and infrastructure, reforestation and greening, and rainwater harvesting tanks. It is said, as far as the benefits of the green economy and monetizing plastic litter, it is said that litter from plastic currently comprises 99% of coastal litter. Research predicts that by 2050, nearly all seabirds will have plastic in their stomachs. Currently estimated at 25 billion rand, we are far from reaching the full potential and benefits of the waste economy. We have not fully harnessed the value of recycling. It is said that 90% of our waste is still being disposed of in landfills. Yet waste has the potential to generate jobs, establish businesses and cooperatives, and ultimately improve lives. Key to this is to mobilize communities to keep the environment clean, and it must be clear that the scourge of plastic waste is a growing global concern and a huge threat to our biodiversity and marine ecosystems. Our lessons from the recent floods and the catastrophe in KZN is that this was alleviated by social solidarity, which we received from individuals, groups, and organizations from across the length and breadth of our country and our international community. We are eternally grateful to all those who offered a helping hand in our hour of need. This was an extraordinary story of leadership from government, civil society, churches, traditional leaders, labor, and the business community. During the July 2021 unrest, the United Nations joined the provincial government to help strengthen coordination and response in a situation of disaster. This partnership came on board again during the April and May floods, and we continue to work with the UN to share lessons on how we can better improve our response in situations of disaster. Local government needs to forge sustainable partnerships with the private sector on making municipalities more resilient to disasters. There is a greater role for the insurance industry, for instance, to play, as it is one of the industries that is already involved in managing risk. We applaud Santam for being an example. It is partnering with at least 4 municipalities in our country to make them risk resilient. In KZN this financial year, we are embarking on a fire safety program focused on informal settlements and rural areas through the Provincial Disaster Management Center. We are also installing smoke alarms in informal residential areas to help with early detection of fires. And in addition, we are rolling out fire breaks to minimize the risk of runaway fires. To receive early disaster warnings, we have undertaken to procure and install an integrated communication and information management system for disaster management in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and in the Provincial Disaster Management Center. Ladies and gentlemen, I think the sentiments expressed by the Honourable MEC Sihle Zikalala, the MEC for Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, lend to the fact that as KwaZulu-Natal, we are working together in growing our province. I thank you.